All right, call the meeting to order at 5:35. First off, any adjustments to the agenda?
I don't have anything.
Move on to the acceptance of minutes.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes of August 26th as presented.
I was not here, so.
Oh,
Oh,
that's right. I'll second that.
I'm sorry.
Any comments? I feel pretty good about it.
yeah.
Yep. Okay, then moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And one abstention. And so new business, we're readjusting the order a little bit because Jan Coplan is here, so you're up first.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm here from BDCC and SeVEDS to present sort of an update to Putney of what SeVEDS and BDCC have been working on in the last 6 months. I know that Laura, several months ago we were here, but there's been an interest from BDCC and SeVEDS to just sort of provide updates on a regular basis, just so towns are aware of what's happening in regards to economic development. And also an opportunity just to hear from the towns, what's of interest to you for us to be incorporating in some of the programs that we're doing. So I brought a couple of handouts that just to look at while going over things. I think this little handout right here, we're calling the universe what we're doing kind of on a large scale. These I'll talk about in a few minutes, but just so people kind of see a contextual picture of what we've been up to in regards to workforce and working with various different groups in developing workforce opportunities in the region. I represent the internship program, and I work with the 6 College Collaborative, which includes Landmark College here in Putney, SIT Graduate Institute, CCV, Community College in Brattleboro, Vermont Technical College, the Brattleboro campus, and SIT Graduate Institute. So I work with those colleges in helping students from those colleges find internship opportunities in the Windham region. What's been exciting is Putney has been an active participant in that we've had 3 different locations host interns. The Putney Co-op actually has had 2 interns, both of them from Landmark, and the West Hill Bike Shop has had another, and then Farnham Cellulose. And we are continuing to reach out to businesses and organizations to see if they're interested in participating in the program. The internships are paid internships, so students have an opportunity to get a sense of what exists right in the region where they're getting their educations, but also to contribute their skills to the workforce needs in the town of Putney. What's exciting for the program overall, the internship program, is in its 1.5 years of existence, we have placed 39 interns in the Windham region, throughout the region. And 6 of those 39 have been offered full-time employment. So the internships are leading to full-time employment. And the other students who haven't been offered full-time employment have expressed an interest after the internship of possibly staying in the area. So we're surveying the students and getting feedback about their experiences. And we're really thrilled about the traction and the momentum of the internship program. And it's also leading to businesses, developing relationships with businesses, and businesses are contacting BDCC and myself now about their workforce needs. So we're more aware of what the workforce needs are than we were previous to the internship program. And then this picture just provides an overall, what we call it the universe, what's going on out there, retaining, cultivating, recruiting, what the SeVEDS committees are doing, the partnerships we've established, and things that are happening within the staff. Grant writing and management, project development, project management, research and data, and community support and convening, and community conversation tracking. But all of this part of a workforce continuum. So we're taking the relationships that are being built through the internship program with businesses and organizations, and our hope now is to expand that into some of the high schools and middle schools. I attended a meeting today and spoke to area guidance counselors and folks from the career development center about opportunities for high school, middle school, and even some of the kindergarten levels to just get some awareness about what businesses and organizations exist right here. So that's kind of in a nutshell what's happening. If you have any questions about the information that's on here, I'm happy to answer them, and if I can't answer them, I can refer you to folks at SeVEDS and BDCC. The other handout that I provided up there, this kind of colored one, just gives an example of some of the paid internships in the area. Farnham Cellulose is listed on here. And we have these all distributed at the colleges and at various different places in throughout the region. And through the Chamber of Commerce too, we're having businesses contact us about their internship needs. But I'm here just to let you know that there's other things that are happening, and if there's needs that we can be aware of from Putney's perspective, that we want to keep those in mind. Just kind of a nutshell, not a lot of detail, but I'm happy to elaborate on some of these things that are happening.
Good. Sounds promising.
Are there any particular, are they like semester long ones, or can they be longer?
They're an array. We let the business of the organization dictate that. So if a student wants to be there and get college credit, they often need to be semester long, but we try and provide some flexibility if it's just a project. I had an intern that I oversaw this summer from GCC, Greenfield Community College, and his internship lasted about 8 weeks. He was doing some database entry work for me, and we've had some writing interns. So we don't want businesses to feel like, okay, it has to be semester long, or it could be all year long. SIT students like to have a practicum, and we've had several interns who have asked to stay longer, that they've been there for the semester and they've wanted to continue. So we did have an intern, it wasn't paid, but she was at the central school, the Putney Central School, that did a full semester, but they don't have to be a semester long. They can be shorter or longer. And summer's a really popular time for them.
I was just thinking about our project on this this donated land that we have, that we keep talking about calling the colleges to. Mm-hmm. Maybe I should call her instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we what we'll do is just walk you through the process of how you fill out an application, post it. It gets posted on a website. We developed a website, 6colleges.com, where the students go on, they see the internships listed, and they apply by cover letter and resume, and it says, as if you're hiring them. It's pretty rigorous. And then each of the colleges provide support, as well as myself, when the student is actually placed in the internship. But the Wyndham Regional Commission had several internships posted last summer. The diversity is having all sorts of diversity helps a lot in the various different sectors. The other handout that I passed out is an example of what's being offered right now, and Marlborough College has actually created that, and it's a whole array.
I guess the kicker for us is the paid part.
Yeah, that. Yeah.
In the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, some towns, hear about the internship program, and the following year end up, budgeting it in.
Yeah.
Because I know I was working with somebody in Grafton who was finding out about it and then ended up adding it to the budget. In some circumstances, we do support unpaid internships. We can't post them on our website, but I do communicate them to the colleges if they're credit bearing. You know, if it's the kind of thing that the student can get credit. So we just want to make sure it's one or the other. So I'm happy to, provide that, disseminate to the colleges or let the colleges know.
Out of curiosity, in order to get credit then, they must have to have a supervising teacher or professor?
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
there must be an evaluation.
Yeah, there's
Got a collaboration between.
Yes, and the faculty member and the student would meet with, if it was you that was overseeing the intern, they sort of lay out, here's the paperwork, here's what's going to be required of you. We try and not keep it, we don't want it to be too burdensome for the organization of the business. A lot of burden falls on the student where they write up their learning outcomes and you say, okay, yes, I can help you meet those in this internship. And then the evaluation is, a lot of times just a survey or something, nothing copious, pages and pages of, right?
I would love to do it, it's just, there is a part of me that I tried to do it a little bit with someone but I have to say, on my end, I wasn't very organized myself, it's like I really didn't know what I was gonna do with this person, so there needs to be some thought put to it so that,
And I think that's how our program is designed. There's a lot of front loading that happens. We educate the organization and the business on how to run an effective internship, an assessment, are you able to provide this, this, and this, guidelines, a little work plan, so that you're not having an experience that doesn't feel successful. One of the things that we're boasting lately is out of the 39 interns that we've placed, only one of them has not been able to complete the internship, and that was a transportation thing. It had nothing to do with how it was set up, so we feel like that's a pretty good track record, that out of that number of internships, they've all been successful.
And typical time commitment on these internships, you may have said, but I missed it.
Typical is semester long, but it doesn't need to be.
No, but I mean, like
hours a day.
10 hours a week, what do they vary all over the
They
place?
vary, they vary, but we have had internships that have only been 10 hours a week, because we're trying to make them compatible with the student's school schedule.
And some are sort of full-term equivalent, or full-time equivalent?
Yeah, because we have some SAT graduate institutes that are just writing their dissertation.
Right.
And so they want something that's,
Sort of full immersion.
full-time,
Yeah.
Sometimes for the credit, it ends up being 12 to 15. You have to have a certain number of hours before the semester ends. Yeah.
That's it, I'm trying to think.
I know, no.
Make us some things.
Well,
For the school.
The kitchen. Right.
The school, the kitchen, and the
Yeah.
garden, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it could be really good.
If you go on to our website, sixcolleges.com, you'll see, even that write-up as well. There's a whole array. We have kitchen help, we have, work with sustainable energy organizations, farming, there's STEM opportunities, grant writing, just a whole array. So nothing's out of the realm of possibility. And that's the beauty of having these 6 colleges participate as well, is that there's a whole array of student and programs.
Great.
Yeah, excellent.
So any other questions about SeVEDS and what BDCC has been up to? Kind of the organization as a whole? I don't know if you've read in the paper, there's been, we just were granted, Senator Leahy was here recently. There was a USDA grant that BDCC and SeVEDS received, a pretty substantial grant for some business innovation ideas and helping people who have business ideas, getting some financial support and counseling around those. So, there's lots of opportunities that have been happening in regards to grants and expansion, just trying to help the workforce and the economic development of the region.
Good.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much for allowing me to come, and if there's any questions, I'll leave a few of my business cards with you.
Yeah.
Feel free to contact me, or if there's other questions, I can direct to someone else.
Great.
All right?
thanks, Gina.
Have a great night. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do you want a card?
All right, highway fund discussion, continued. Yes.
Just continued from last time. So in the packet of information, I included a trial balance. The numbers are somewhat real. There's a section, the employee benefits section is not completely filled in. I just plugged in some numbers to make sure we knew there was gonna be numbers there. But basically, this is, so Scott, you weren't here the last time, but one of the things that Brian approached me about, and this has been a discussion we've kind of brought up over and over again, of separating the highway fund from the general fund to keep it as its own segregated fund. A couple of years ago, when Dennis was here, he asked me about it. When Brian started, he asked me about it. I created a fund at that time with a chart of accounts and everything, thinking maybe we would move that way, and it's kind of just been sitting there with no numbers in it. So today what I did was I added the budget just to give us an idea of what it would look like. I mean, it looks just like a general fund report. You have the budget, the revenues, the expenses. The difference with the expenses for the highway fund that Brian's not used to seeing is it has all the employee benefits associated with highway employees, which is a little different. And then it also has its own property tax line, which that means we would have another tax rate, and we would be voting on the highway fund separate from the general fund at town meeting.
So our municipal tax rate would go down, but we would have the added tax rate of the highway.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't have the total numbers, but in theory, yes.
In theory, it would be similar,
Yeah.
equal to what it
Yeah.
would have been had we not
Had we not,
done
yeah.
this.
So there's a couple of I've done this in a couple other towns where we've broken it out, and there's been a couple schools of thought on it, and it's just really making the decision whether we want to do this or not do this, and if we do, why are we doing it? Why are we taking the time to do this? And if we're not, what is,
What are
one of
the
the
benefits?
One of the things that we keep running into when we sit down to go over the highway budget, we meaning Brian and I, is it's difficult to parse out of the general fund. If we have a grant going, how much of the grant have we gotten back? How much money have we spent? We cross years, so we're having to keep track of it kind of on a separate piece of paper and just kind of keep it in our head. If there's revenue associated with the highway, let's say we sell a piece of equipment, like we sold this, was it the leaf blower or we sold that, that just goes into the general fund. It doesn't really offset highway. We spent $7, we brought in $7, we spent $4.
Goes back into the same pot.
It all goes back into the same pot. So, and one of the things that he's been really active doing since he's been here is we've been aggressively going after some grants that we haven't before. And our Better Back Roads grant, the last one that we did, not the one for the culvert inventory, but the one previous to that, the Hickory Ridge, the bank stabilization project, we actually made a little money on it because our match, we used our own labor.
Resources, yeah.
So, there's a feeling of, okay, so we worked really hard to get this grant and we actually made some money on it, that should stay with the highway. Whereas when it's all lumped in with the general fund, it's difficult to kind of pull it all out. And, there might be a bad winter that, some of that cushion we have is good to have. So that's kind of the flip side of it, is that what happens on a year where the highway fund loses some money. In the past, we've been able to kind of cushion it with fund balance in the general fund, whereas if this happens, the highway is the highway, and if they have a deficit, you need to make it up.
Explain it to the voters at that time and every
Yeah.
year when we present the budget.
Yeah.
As a separate.
So, which is not a bad thing.
That's not
It's
bad.
very transparent
Right.
that way. I mean, it's really
Yeah.
transparent as to how the highway operations are going. The other thing that will be pulled out of, which I forgot to do, is the all of the equipment loans that are associated with the highway, those will be in here. So it's a big chunk of our general fund budget. And some things Brian's not used to really looking at, you know, they're kind of some hard costs that you can't really change because, you know, benefits are what they are and loan payments are what they are. So it's really just a change in, it makes it more obvious on your tax bill how much of your tax rate is going towards the highway. And it really keeps it just completely separate from everything else. So I don't know. I know at one time, I think Scott, we had this discussion, and I don't know, I seem to remember that you weren't quite sure about it, and I couldn't remember why.
I'm recalling something similar. I'm trying to remember what exactly what my argument was about it. I think it was just, you know, not a sufficient amount of information at the time, or the impacts of it.
One question, maybe this wouldn't be an impact, but if they buy their own heating oil, their own diesel and everything, currently doesn't the town buy that all together? And do we get a deal for that?
We get a
If we're buying it all? Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
That wouldn't
But that
change.
wouldn't change. No,
we would
because this is
still
just
have-
a bookkeeping.
Exactly,
Yeah.
it would still be the same
Yeah.
money being spent on it, it just would be a different way of accounting for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
I
it
don't know.
sounds to me that we're going to, you know, we're going to depend on our road foreman to be, you know, fairly astute with this ongoing down through, you know.
Yeah, I think that
So
part
that, you
of,
know, in a changing position, that may
Yeah.
not be a strength somebody brings to a position that necessarily, you know, in the past. And if, you know, we're gonna have to recruit.
although if they're not as, I mean, what Brian does right now is he'll sit down with a piece of paper and he'll write all the revenues that he knows are highway. And then he looks, okay, this one's overspent, but that was because we had property stolen or whatever, and then looks over here that says, okay, here's the refund for that stolen property to try, so it's this constant back and forth. So for him, he can do it, but keeping this separate, it's very clear what belongs to them and what doesn't. And so for somebody that's not as good at that kind of manipulation on the paper, this is a more clear method.
Right. So the mechanics of actually doing this, we would have to go to town hall, town meeting, and get the approval to make this change. So that it would affect the following year's budget, or would we budget it as a, you know, separately, as two separate entities?
It's not a separate,
No,
Yeah.
not entity, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, bad choice of words.
I don't think we need approval to
Well, I'm just,
break, I don't
just
know.
curious,
I mean, I'll
you know,
double
as
check
the-
that, but the last couple places I did, we
timeline
didn't
of
do
how-
that,
how
that doesn't
you-
mean that it wasn't, yeah.
Change. And you said that several other towns you had worked in had done this?
A couple, I know Guilford, the one that's at the top of my mind is Guilford,
Okay.
that we did that.
Do they?
Yeah, it would be, I mean, from a town meeting perspective, it would just be warned separately
Right.
from the, but, you know, it would be like the sewer.
Right,
sewer water
okay,
budget, you
yeah,
know.
exactly.
yeah. Yeah, I don't think we need voter approval on how we do our bookkeeping, it's just,
We should make sure though, if there's any.
Yeah, I will.
Right,
I'll
if we're
check.
setting up a separate, you know, tax rate in effect.
yeah, I'll check on it. But, so if that's the case, then we would do what you said, is get the approval, then do it for the next year. Or if it's not the case, this year we would be looking at separate budgets. So instead of the entire budget together, we would be looking at,
And, or, I mean, do we need that approval? Or is this a process that we can do internally? I'm just.
No, that's what I
again,
mean.
just
We don't know.
we don't know.
Yeah,
So
right.
the two, that's what I'm saying, the two things are either we're gonna have to go for voter approval, but if I find out that we don't and we decide we wanna do this, we would do this during this budget season.
Right.
Because I would wanna start it, I mean, I talked to the auditor about it, he said you could even kind of start it now, just to help you when you go to budgeting time.
Right.
But it really wouldn't be
Official
completely,
until it was
yeah,
voted on.
until, well,
Until
Until July 1st.
The department, oh, I see what you're saying.
yeah, it would kind of be that July 1st is when we would really
The
start,
transition.
yeah.
The next
Until July 1st, right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I was just, I mean, I talked to Anita about it to see what, because it's another tax rate. The highway fund, when you bill the taxes, the highway fund would end up with all of their taxes. Whatever we're delinquent always ends up with the town, just like the school. The school gets made whole.
Sorry, say that again.
When you bill the taxes, the highway fund gets all their money.
Right.
So if there's a shortage in collections, then the town is the one that ends
Right.
up with the delinquents, ends up with the penalty.
Right.
Just like the school, when we bill for the school gets all their money.
Right.
They don't end up with delinquent.
And would the capital funding for, capital funds be switched to that?
I don't think so,
Oh,
because the
okay.
capital fund is not just equipment.
You're right.
It's more of a general.
It's more of
Yeah.
a general. Or would-
Yeah, that's a whole nother budget
Okay.
discussion this year, because it's kind of like I don't know.
If you,
We need to make some decisions
Right.
about that
Picture how
capital
it's gonna be on the
equipment or
page,
capital fund, because there's money just sitting there with no real plan. And it's a little bit unusual during auditing time when they say, what is this money for? Oh, well, just in case. It is, that's what it's for.
They're right.
That's the honest answer right now.
Honest answer.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
So
A bad winter.
I will find out that answer before the next meeting, but then maybe at that point, because I want to start working on the budget.
you could start changing it over if it.
Yeah, I want to start
There is
building
no way
the
to-
spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Unless you guys can think of some other reason why we don't want to, like I said, the only other part of it is that when you run a deficit,
Well, yeah, I mean, but obviously, we'd have to have mechanisms for, would we then have to have an article for the highway? I think you and I talked about this, for the highway to be able to borrow, essentially that same article we have for the town budget. I don't think if we do it for sewer. The article that says,
you don't really,
do
you
we
still
grant
have,
ability to borrow in.
you still have access to the pooled cash.
Exactly, so that's what, we have the ability to cover them.
Yeah.
If there's an issue,
Yeah.
even if they're accounted for, so.
Right. It's just in the next year,
It needs to be.
and that should be, if we're going to do this, we should make it clear how we're going to cover a deficit. So if we have a deficit, are we going to, in that following year, make that deficit up during budget season? Or are we going to, that was a question the auditor couldn't answer, is if we legally have to make, I know in the schools there's this process that you have to make up a deficit, maybe over a certain number of years or something. Yeah. So far, even in this bad last winter, we still didn't,
Right, generally.
yeah, we still didn't run a deficit, it was, he stopped spending money in other areas, because he knew.
Of course, yeah,
So-
that can change.
There was a
Yeah.
spike in fuel costs.
I think if we did put some of the burden of delinquencies on them, they might come up with some pretty creative ways to collect,
Yeah, well, I don't think I
There
would.
goes the mailbox.
It could get scary. And then I'd have a whole new set of problems. So, okay, so I'll check that out and then maybe we'll move forward with it.
Would it hurt to check with towns like Guilford or whatever?
Well, I know
They would-
Guilford's was fine.
And they
haven't. One of the things I kept telling the road foreman down there was, you just have to be prepared that when we take this out of your budget, you are the budget. It leaves a very small amount and it's gonna be very obvious, which was fine. Like I said, it's more transparent that they never heard a word at town meeting about it.
Okay.
People know that plus that is what they've always had, so,
Right. No, and I think
in
that-
that first
I think
year.
it is, appealing in that sense. That it's,
The other difference for Brian's role would be, I think, not that he isn't likely to anyway, but he would have to be prepared to quote unquote sort of defend his budget at town meeting, which when it's part of the general fund,
Yeah.
it doesn't get parsed out.
Which I actually think he would feel
be
more
okay.
comfortable doing
Yeah.
because he does have it like straightforward in front of him.
Yeah,
I think in that first year, we would definitely make something to go with the budget
Yeah.
that says, this is the overall increase.
this is why it's
Because
happening.
everybody's used to seeing that percentage increase for the entire budget. We would
Right.
have to make that clear so that people would understand.
What the entire
Yeah,
increase was.
yeah, so for that first year to make people, help them transition through it, but,
Yeah.
okay, we can do that.
Right.
I'll pass that down, you can put it in here.
So this is the Putney Fire Department service invoices?
Yep. So we have the, Putney Fire Department Service Reimbursement Ordinance, which if you haven't seen, I think I put a copy of it in your packet, which it's thick, so you don't wanna read it right now, but, we have the ability to invoice individuals for, different types of, incidents. Most of the time, we've been able to collect on those incidents, but when I was going through the audit this year, I was reconciling the receivable for that account, and we have some really old outstanding invoices that we want to write off. We do have the ability to do collections on these through, I think the mechanism, maybe small claims court, that kind of thing. We've never exercised that right. Doesn't mean that we can't. These are pretty old, and I guess Tom and I went through the list and kind of, went through each one of them and said they're uncollectible.
Just out of interest, what are the steps that either you guys have taken in an effort to collect these? I mean, did you just send bills
Yeah.
and they haven't been paid and that's what there is to it?
Yeah.
And then we invoice. And then, Cynthia, if I remember right, there are a couple there, things such as a business went out of business, so we're not gonna collect that. Other people have left the area or become otherwise unable to.
Yeah.
So,
I guess I've never seen this before, so.
in my copy, because I don't know, did they not leave it in your?
I didn't see it.
I have one.
Okay,
Oh, I didn't see it.
sorry, go ahead.
But, so, like the first one was motor vehicle accident, $1,040, I think it is. Why, I guess I don't understand why they would have to pay it. Does everyone pay? Anyone who's in a motor vehicle
No,
accident?
it's only in accordance with the ordinance.
Okay, so they did something,
And if they were in an accident and if they were ticketed, or if they,
I see, okay. So if they had done something illegal.
Right, if they're essentially at fault.
Okay, I see, okay. And insurance doesn't pick stuff like that up, I guess?
sometimes.
Yeah, they do, but again, with these specifically, there are circumstances which just make it so that we're not gonna collect.
Okay.
No, and it would be, I think you're unlikely to, it would be incumbent on the person who was invoiced for this to deal with their insurance company to try and recover that. I mean, you're not gonna go directly to
No,
an
we don't.
insurance
No, we
company
don't
and
do
try and
insurance.
recover this. So if somebody doesn't take those steps themselves, then that's sort of it's just not gonna happen. I mean, a collection agency or somebody might do that if.
I mean, one of the
If it
things
chose to go
we
that
need to
route,
do in my office, I need to do a little better, is follow up on, they kind of come in, we record them. Previous to me starting here, these weren't even recorded as a receivable, as if we were even gonna get it. We only recorded it when we received the money.
And do we, does this have a line item for revenue?
Yeah, it goes into, well, it depends on what it's 4, or do all these go into?
Well, those are all.
These all go into the fire debt service fund?
So I'm just wondering, do you have any sense of sort of what percentage of these you collect versus what become uncollectible?
90-95%.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Most people just pay it and it never becomes an issue.
Or they just forward everything to their insurance company and we get
Yeah.
reimbursement from them.
From them,
Yeah.
okay. And when you bill somebody, do you include something that says your insurance company might
Yeah,
be willing to pay this?
Yeah, we encourage people to forward it to their insurance company.
Yeah, and I know at least one of these, I think, was just a sense on one of the people's parts that that charge was inappropriate for them to be paying in addition to the fact that they pay taxes in Putney. And I don't know whether it was sort of a political statement or how you would term that, but I know some people feel like they shouldn't have been billed for these things and therefore don't deal with them. And I don't, I guess that's just, you just have to roll with that, is essentially what it boils down to.
Yeah, we're not familiar with the specifics of the ordinance, probably.
Right, yeah, no, I mean, I think that, if we, we can send the bill and on the assumption that people are gonna pay based on the ordinance, but unless we, sort of went out there and said, hey, if you do this, that, and the other thing.
That's an old argument,
Yeah,
it's ignorance of the law, and you don't deal with this.
Well, and that's that's why I say I need to do a better job of following up quicker than 2 years later
Yeah.
and really put a copy of the ordinance in, and this is something that
This
the
is
town
why
voted
you have
on.
been billed
This is
for it,
what we
right.
have the ability to do.
Right.
To try to collect. We don't want to do that, but
Right.
so that we don't end up in the situation where we have some that, somebody's moved out of town or it's
Right.
so old, it's like now you're,
It's just not realistic.
So it's kind of,
Yes.
let's wipe the slate clean of the ones that are still sitting there, and from this point forward, really be diligent about who's left on there,
And simply, insurance, restitution can be slow and behind the curve as well.
No, and the reality is that there are gonna be some that remain uncollected no matter what you do, so
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will make a motion that the, let's see, that the uncollectible service reimbursement invoices in the amount of $6,065 be written off. How would I state that?
Just be written
what?
off.
Just be written off, okay.
I was thinking of.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, clean slate.
Clean slate.
I thought I did that clean slate last year, but forgot. So I went to reconcile them again, so.
We'll all be back again.
Okay, 45-day notice for root net meter solar array at Putney School.
So we received a notice for a solar array that will be going up at Putney School. I don't know, are you familiar with it? I sent it to the planning commission. They had a meeting. They have no comments to file. We're not required to file any comments. It's just one of those that, and I don't know, Scott, if you want to see, I don't know if you've seen anything. I know.
Application to the Public Service Board.
Yeah.
So
It's just a chance to comment if we have any comments on the
the
project.
location is down at the lower farm of Putney School, which is down on Pottenbrook Road.
Yeah.
And it essentially will be, for the most part, out of sight.
Yeah.
It'll have its own access road. It's a little less than 500 kilowatt array. I can't remember what the final was, 460 or something. 447.
446.
Got all they're stationary panels, so.
That's some of the cross country ski area for the kids. So they can ski under it, I suppose.
So I guess what I'm looking for
And
is
this
if you want me to
is-
comment.
providing power for primarily the Putney School or?
For primarily the Putney School. I mean,
People also
the-
are investing in as a community or?
No,
Oh,
no, this is a private array
For the Putney
that
School.
would be intended to provide roughly half of Putney School's electrical needs, and in fact, I mean, the hope is over time to potentially build a second array that would be somewhere, it's a little bit hard to say exactly what it would end up needing to be, but the ultimate goal would be to become net zero for electrical demand at the Putney School. And, as they go forward with the field house being the example of going with mini splits and other, basically electrical heating systems that they'd be able to eliminate over time their fossil fuel footprint.
You need these back?
I can put it back in here.
Do you have any?
I do not.
Okay.
So you need a,
We need action on
No,
this?
I don't think so, unless we really wanted to.
So, when is, are you looking to start at a particular time?
I think they'd like to do groundbreaking this fall if
This fall?
possible.
No, he got it
That
as
just came in the
chair.
mail.
The planning commission got one and I got one. You want one?
I haven't seen one.
Yeah, you can have planning commissions, they give it back, because I just need one here for people to look at if they
Yeah.
want to come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Town manager's report.
So I wanted to let you know that our attorney requested reimbursement for the portion of the legal fees that we have incurred so far for the Trans-Canada, which was $1,244.80, and we did get a check back for that. So we did get reimbursed for the legal fees that we've spent so far.
From the state?
From the state, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't have any updated news on the progress of the.
Newbury hasn't had.
No, I don't, I think it might have been heard, but I don't know
That's- I
if
think that's
the,
right. Yeah,
of course, we all know what happened in Rockingham, they raised the value up there.
right.
So, it'll be interesting to see what happens in Newbury, but I know that Larry, has picked everything up from, after Richard's passing, so he has gotten himself up to speed with everything and has been in contact with different attorneys about it, and, I think we're just waiting to see what happens in Newbury, really. So hopefully that'll be soon. So as of right now, I would say, I don't think maybe there might be a little bit more legal fee, but, nothing substantial yet. So that was good to get that money back. And then the other thing I forgot to write on here, but I wanted to let you know that I went to a floodplain administrators training last week, I think it was, down in Brattleboro for the day. And there's going to be a discussion soon regarding our flood hazard regulations that are part of our zoning bylaws right now. Right now, the floodplain administration duties fall on me as zoning administrator. I clearly learned at the training that I didn't know everything that I needed to know about it. One of the things that I did learn was that historically, when people have come in and asked, do I need a permit for renovations? Do I need a permit for driveway? And that's always been, well, you need a highway access permit. Do I need a permit to do excavation on my land? We've said no, zoning permits you don't need. But we're going to have to start having people fill out an application, because if they're in, we have to determine whether they're in the floodplain, and even though they may not need a zoning permit, they need a floodplain, that portion of the permit.
Which is a state permit or?
It's me. And you have to go by the regulations of
Only
our
if they're
flood
in a
hazard.
floodplain.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So people are gonna be a little bit surprised, that's a different, you know, if somebody renovates, I have to first figure out, if they're in a floodplain, first figure out how substantially they're how, you know, if it's 50% or more, substantial renovation, then we have to, they have to bring their property up to flood. Which is not really new, it's a little new for me.
Hasn't been
Yeah, it hasn't,
enforced,
yeah. So, I think that one of the things that may change in our regulations, and the big topic is gonna be, are we going to start including the river corridors, not just FEMA floodplain? Because there's a river corridor map, because we all know that the FEMA maps, they're pretty old, and they don't include some of the places that we know flood during these events, and that's along the river corridors, but it may not necessarily be in a FEMA floodplain. So that may end up getting added to our regulations, but there's gonna have to be a lot of public discussion about it. Because that's gonna affect a lot more properties than,
Yeah, and has impact, I would assume, on insurance expenses and all sorts of
insurance
things.
and, yeah, so that training I went to, and I just wanted to let you know that the 18th, I'm going to be going to a wastewater training. I think it's maybe it's wastewater, I don't know, it's about working on budgets and setting rates and stuff. And then, on the 30th, I'm gonna go to Montpelier for a budget seminar, or kind of a refresher course prior to getting ready for budgets. So, those trainings are, and then the 28th, I have a meeting with the Brattleboro Town Manager regarding animal control.
Good.
The Wyndham Regional has invited the shared municipal group, that list of people that, I don't know if you got an email, to see if there are other towns that are interested in coming to this meeting and discussing the possibility of sharing animal control duties. So.
What's Brattleboro's situation now? They have somebody?
I don't really know what it is now. I think that's one of the things we'll learn
Yeah.
when we go to that meeting. So that's what I have. Budget status report. My budget status report for FY16 is in here. I still haven't moved the property taxes for the school out, so it still looks like we are going to get $5 million, which we're not. And then just to let you know that the audit is, as far as I'm concerned, is complete. I've sent everything that, he was here for 2 days. I've sent everything, all of the financial statements to him. The town ended up with a fund balance of $156,925, which was an increase of about $8,700 over last year. So the $65,000 that we budgeted for surplus, to use surplus funds to offset expenses, we didn't touch it. Yeah, because we didn't need it. So we have a pretty hefty fund balance right now, so that would be a discussion during. So I think for now, the painting, we're just gonna leave it, we overspent.
Yeah.
And not worry about transferring money from capital to cover the. But everything else pretty much the same as the last time I was reported on the draft statement. So hopefully he'll have some feedback. I did, of course, we go through the list of, is there anything you need to disclose during this fiscal year? I told him about the donated land, he obviously needed to know about that. The Trans-Canada appeal, which might have a significant financial impact if it wasn't to go in our favor, and the IRS notice, which at this point right now I haven't had an update on, so I had to disclose that to him, because that could have a significant financial impact as well.
And we don't know what's coming.
I don't, I need to check in with her. I'll try to, for the next meeting, I might invite her to
Have an
come.
update, yeah.
Is the Vermont one taken care of?
I don't, there's both of them, those are both of them I gave to John. I know that the 60-day time
passed.
period has passed, the extension they gave her to send the information in, so need to circle back and check in with her, and I'll invite her to the meeting and let her answer the questions, but I don't know. So if you, I can't think of anything, Laura and I sat there and I'm like, can we think of anything else that we need to let him know about? And I couldn't think of anything. It seems like we had caught everything. Here's the
All right.
I did check on that, the question of whether there was potentially federal money available for invasives control on the donated land. And the answer is no, with the caveat that if it were to be in the hands of a nonprofit that was not the municipality, then they would be eligible. So for example, the Pinnacle Association it has access to federal funding for invasives control. So we as a town do not. But there are ways we could consider that.
I'll look back through my emails. It seems like Ann sent me something about some money that was available for invasive species, but I can't remember. I'll just look back at that. It's been, the audit kind of got me behind a little bit.
Recurring ground is.
Insurance, liability. We got some money back, I think, through our workers' comp audit, right?
So on the backhoe, we paid that out, but then we borrowed to offset it. Is that how that worked? Okay, so that doesn't, they're paid in full, so we don't have a lien with them, we just have the bank loan.
Right.
Okay.
This is the payment to them.
Right,
Yeah,
that's what I'm,
yeah.
yeah, that's what I was.
Yeah.
Pathways is for sidewalk?
No, for Safe Routes.
Oh, they did that too.
Yes. RSG does the sidewalk.
Right, I knew that, but Pathways.
He was our resident, he was the engineer.
Exactly,
Yes.
on the project, so.
Did the feedback sign get fixed?
It did.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yep.
I meant to go there today and look.
So they have to cut some branches down. I think, or some of
Yes.
those. On the one coming from our direction.
Really? I haven't noticed
Those
that.
branches.
payment.
Yeah, they
Is that right?
asked the highway department to do that the day we did the walkthrough.
Mhm.
There's going to be some paperwork coming, hopefully, to the next select board meeting. That project, we only had 68,000, something like that, don't quote my number, but it ended up being almost $100,000, so they had to amend our grant agreement an extra. I mean, I almost stopped the project at one point because I was like, well, wait a minute.
We didn't agree with it, right?
Yeah, I don't, where are we getting all this extra money? And they are amending our grant agreement
Are
to
they?
include the engineering for pathways and the overage of the construction cost.
Okay, good.
Yes.
But we're still gonna have to pay a chunk, or is it
No,
still
no,
basically
no.
like we do the initial match that we were?
There was no match.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, there was no match on that grant at all.
And,
Did that get paved?
no, it got, well, it got paved,
The
the sidewalk got
Yeah,
paved,
no, I
but
understand.
the turnaround itself is not getting
It's not
paved.
there, right. What happened with that, wasn't that?
No, it wasn't part of it. The
Oh,
paving, no, it wasn't part of it because
That's
well, just to let people know, the reason it didn't get paid was because the drainage, there would have had to have been a different drainage system, so the engineering and the cost of that would have put the project way over.
Yeah,
So because they left it,
they didn't have to.
they
do
didn't
it.
have to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I did talk to Herb about it and said, maybe at some point the school should put some money in
Think about
their
it.
capital budget to get it paved, because it's just gonna get all torn up during,
Oh, it's, yeah.
yeah. So,
Well,
I mean,
those pieces of asphalt.
Yeah, Brian
the
was-
apron is gonna get.
yeah, that's gonna get torn up. But I mean, Brian was concerned even with the poles there. He's like, I'm gonna take a couple of those poles out.
Yeah.
And I notice even in a rig my length, that curvature feels tight at this point. Have you been up in one of your bigger trucks and
Yeah.
it just means you have to stay a long way away from that curve?
Yeah, either that or, well, depending upon where we actually need to go,
Yeah,
don't follow the normal traffic path.
yeah, yeah, no, it's definitely a different feeling to it.
Right.
I mean, there's nice sides of it, but it also
Right,
is
but it's-
surprising how tight that curve is when you're in there with a vehicle.
So,
Well, I'm curious, there was, I know, some mess ups with the ADA metal plates.
yeah.
Who should have known, so to speak?
Well, the plans did not specifically call for what they needed.
Mhm.
So, and those plans were approved by the state. So the state took responsibility for some of it.
Mhm.
The contractor took responsibility for some of the, I can't remember which way it was, some of it as well, because they were told before they put some of them down not to do it, and they did it. The message didn't get to the right person, and it still got done anyway. So there was an attempt to get it right before they got poured,
Mhm.
and yeah. So, but really, ultimately, it was the engineer who
Okay.
did the design, but then the state approved the design, so,
Not to spring around,
yeah,
no pun intended, right?
so.
All right.
I'm just glad it's done. I can't wait for the bills to be paid and the grant to be closed, because that one, yeah, a long time
It's only been
coming.
like 10 years, what are you talking about?
Yeah. I'll
I
tell you
think that might have
this,
started before you and I sat at
this
desk.
summer,
That's less than the parking lot.
I'll tell you this, the summer of managing it felt like 10 years, because it was,
It's been a long time, it's really amazing.
yeah.
And what is the story, yeah, I don't know whether you know, what is the story with the parking ride? What's going on with
I
that?
think they're just waiting for
National
that.
Waiting for that pole to get relocated.
So National Grid, did they get Public Service Board approval to do that and everything? They did?
Yeah, that's been approved. And
Amazing.
now,
Wow.
And they
a couple different organizations / agencies need to sign off at different levels, and then they can finally schedule to have it relocated and then come in and do it.
Did
So
you
who
read the
knows?
article in the comments about it?
No.
She did a really good job. She actually found out that the bike shelter was not up yet because the company that built it burned down with the bike shelter in it, so they had to rebuild the bike shelter.
Okay.
Yeah, there was a lot of, yeah, she did a good job on that article. It was quite a while ago, maybe a month and a half ago. Yeah. She found out information. She came and asked me questions. She knew more about it than I did. I just said, no, to call the state.
And once that pole is moved, it's pretty much ready to roll, isn't it?
Say, yeah, I know.
Yeah, they've got to finish the lighting
Right.
and pave it and line it and all that.
The paving isn't done.
No,
That's just the
the,
first coat.
right, the first coat's done.
It's not finished up.
Of course, golf is almost over, but the Wednesday crowd that parks here with golf, they'll be able to move their way down. Because when I drove in this morning, there were 5 cars out
Back
there.
in here.
Were they, the chargers, or the auto charger, the electric
Oh, I don't
car
know.
chargers? those-
They're not there yet, but they will be.
They were there for part of that too.
I have noticed that they put in that Tesla charging station down by Price Chopper. And I've noticed cars there several times. It's kind of cool.
Okay.
Okay,
Tom's on a
So,
little bit of a time schedule, so.
okay. You got a little bit of time.
Yeah, as soon after 7 as I can, but
Yeah.
we're fine.
all right, so we need a motion to have it.
Motion to go into executive session
So
for
moved.
this.
Yes, per 1 VSA 313, the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And we would like to invite Cynthia to join us and Tom to join us.